What is up, everybody? Austin and me are back. We are going to finish up our 2022 running backs. The freshmen here, we talked about it in the last video. We did 12 through 6. We're going to give you guys some players to look forward to, maybe trades coming to the end of, I think most. I don't know. The ones I'm in, we have what's it called? A trade window, whatever. Do most of the ones you're in, is there like a deadline for trades?
It's kind of split. Though some of them are today, actually. I think the ones that I have a deadline in are all today for the college side.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, but the clock's ticking. I've got, my phone's blowing up. So sorry if I have to step away for a second.
No, I completely understand. I know, and most of the leagues you're not really competing in, so I understand you got to get that. You got to get that ready to go. No, so we're going to talk about a couple of these running backs. Like I said in the last video, we'll try and go through each position. Just give you guys players that to be looking forward to. This is a really good running back class, as I mentioned we did the 12 through 6 in the previous video. So before we start with number 5, Austin, let everybody know who your 12 through 6 is and who you talked about in the last video. If for whatever reason you didn't watch it, if you didn't, pause this video, go watch the other one, then come back and watch this one.
I think it was a good video, give a nice breakdown of what we've got. So I'm going to give you guys just a couple honorable mentions up to 15, just to make it a nice clean number here for you. A few extra names for you. That's what we're all about here at Campus to Canton. Added on value. So my top, I have 3 guys that are round out the top 15 here. Dallin Hayden, a running back, has committed to OSU, is number 15. Omarion Hampton. I don't know if he's picked a school yet or not. I know he was looking at UNC and a couple other schools. He's number 14 for me. And then number 13 is George Pettaway, a Michael Carter-esque running back that is committed to UNC. So those are kind of my honorable mentions there. Then the guys we talked about last time, number 12, Gavin Sawchuk, going to Oklahoma. Number 11, Arlen Harris Jr., committed to Stanford. Number 10, Ollie Gordon, Oklahoma State kid. Tevin White at number 9. He's going to Arizona State. Number 8 is Terrence Gibbs, committed to Florida. Number 7 is Rayleigh Brown, also going to Oklahoma. And then number 6 is Le'Veon Moss, undecided. But we did speculate a little bit as to where he'd end up last time.
Yeah, so mine are a little bit different in that order. Obviously, for instance, Austin mentioned at number 12 for him is Gavin Sawchuk. He is actually number 4 for me. So we just mostly talked about it. We did it in the order that Austin had. The main difference for mine is we talked about all those guys, but I also had Quinshon Judkins, who I am a big fan of, as is Colin, which means we're probably wrong. Austin doesn't
you don't want to be teamed up with Colin anywhere. So as soon as you heard that, you knew that was the death blow.
Yeah, it did. I dropped him immediately, like 15 spots in my rankings. As soon as I saw that Colin liked him too, I was like, well, shit. If it was Felix, as much as I like to argue with Felix, okay, maybe I'm onto something here. Austin, he can be wrong sometimes, but as soon as it was Colin, I was like, shit. So yeah, Quinshon Judkins was the only other player in there that I talked about that was different from Austin's ranking. So those are the guys we talked about in the last video, obviously outside of the 3 guys that Austin gave you guys a little bit more info on, and we maybe can talk about those guys at a different time. But let's jump into 5, because these guys are the top of the class. They're the guys that we are really excited about. 2 of them going to Penn State. They're going to be the first 2 guys that we talk about. So let's start with Kaytron Allen. There we go. 5'11", 224 star. He is committed to Penn State, coming out of the IMG Academy. 203 rush attempts for 1,612 yards, 25 touchdowns. And as you can see over here, a couple of those guys we talked about in the last video right toward the end didn't do a lot in the receiving game. And you may think 21 receptions is not a lot for a junior. Then these are their junior stats, not their senior stats. They also don't pass the ball to running backs a ton in high school as well. So 21 catches is still pretty good for a running back. Let's go ahead and get your thoughts here on Kaytron Allen as I get these this nice little highlight video going.
Yeah, and just to contextualize that a little bit further, I believe IMG Academy only played 6 games last year with everything going on. So, you've got and IMG Academy, he was behind Lavoisier Carroll, and there was another back there as well. So those are actually very good stats for a kid there who is at IMG. If you guys don't know, just a big prep academy down there in Florida. So just my thoughts on Kaytron. I flirt with putting him into my tier 1, but I think that there's definitely a delineation between my top 4 guys and him. And it's going to come down to athleticism. But first, kind of some of the good things about him. He's listed at 220, and he looks every bit of it. He's already got the size that he doesn't have to really gain any weight there. nice pad level, a bit of a power back. And I know there can be some negative connotations with some calling somebody a power back. It means they're kind of slow and just a big dude. But you can see him. I mean, he's got some decent speed here, pulling away, and some nice short area quickness as well. And I think that helps him kind of sift through traffic. I think he's pretty advanced in that regard, which again is why I'm always flirting with putting him in that tier 1. But it just comes down to, again, not a huge speed guy. I think he can get down into the 4.5s with some of the college weight room training and all that kind of stuff. But that's basically the end all with him. I could see a Branson Robinson Jr. type guy in college. I mean, a guy that's got nice size and can move pretty well, just not quite at that elite level that you want.
Yeah, so just to give you guys an idea, because he is up here in my rankings as well, I can pull up the page here if I just like click completely off Kaytron Allen there. And kind of give you guys an idea of where we have him ranked. So I have him at 6 and Austin has him at 5 right there. He's much lower in the consensus ranks, though. He's 11 in the 24/7 composite and 13 for 24/7. I like his burst. I do think that, and vision, that's kind of my go-to, right? For running backs, I love me some vision. I do think he's got very good vision at the line of scrimmage, and I do think that he's got really good burst. Like you mentioned, he's got good speed. I think that burst is really good compared to what he is in his speed. I haven't really seen a lot, and I'm curious to see if we get any in his senior tape. A lot of the receiving stuff, I don't know how good of a pass catcher he is. Again, 21 catches is still pretty good to see that he was able to do that in high school. The biggest thing for me, and I'll kind of drop this off here with him, is obviously the next guy we're about to talk about. Being there with him, that's going to be interesting on how they split those two, because it can go into Penn State, and the next guy we're going to talk about is committed to Penn State as well. They've done a good job of developing these guys, right? I mean, you go all the way back, the past couple of years, Saquon Barkley. Say what you want about Miles Sanders. He's been productive in the NFL when he's been healthy. Noah Cain at times looked like he was going to be able to be a very good back and possibly an NFL back. Injuries have kind of slowed him down a little bit as well, it seems. So him going to Penn State, I think, is going to be interesting to see if him and this next guy, and I'm going to save one of the questions I have for him for that, because obviously there's the connection there, but it's a loaded backfield before we even get to the next guy. I mean, you've got Keziah Holmes, Kavion Lee, you've got Devin Ford, and they're all still on the roster now with Singleton and Allen, who we're about to talk about, and Singleton joining him. And possibly even more pressing might be that James Franklin is linked to the LSU and the USC job openings. Do you see Allen being a good fit for them? And obviously, it's hard to kind of read the tea leaves on this. If Franklin were to leave, do you think that might affect some of these guys and possibly force them to leave Penn State as well?
I don't know how to read that room right now because the staff seemed very hell-bent on bringing in 2 backs this class. So I don't know if they know that some guys have been talking about leaving and that's on the table. Because I mean, they were in on a bunch of other top backs here as well. They were in on Tevin Smith. They were in on I forget somebody else as well though. So I mean, they Marion Hampton, I think, was one, or George Pettaway, one of those two. So like they were in on a bunch of these top guys, which leads me to believe that room may not be as crowded. And really, neither Kayvon Lee nor Keziah Holmes has really kicked off there. And those rooms look busy, but if a staff misses on one class, all of a sudden it opens things up a lot more. You look at Oklahoma right now, it seems like, the Hasselwood and Weiss and the other guy that just got kicked off the team, like none of those guys hit like they thought they would. So now Oklahoma seems open. Ohio State, they brought in that class of Fleming, Scott, Cooper, and JSN, and in likelihood, JSN's the only guy that probably still going to be there getting any playing time. So that opens up. I mean, so I see a scenario in which they're not happy with Holmes and Lee and Devin Ford's whatever, and so that's why they're bringing in 2 of these guys in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a bad thing. We saw Ohio State do this last year. Now, Evan Pryor and Travion Henderson was ranked as high. Pryor wasn't up there as high as these 2 guys are. But, I mean, Pryor's gotten some run, and he's looked good at the back half of these games when they've been blowouts. So, to answer your question, wow, I did not realize this. So, both Pettaway and I didn't type in both guys. Okay, both Petaway and Hampton
Okay.
are hard commits to North Carolina, which I did not
Oh, I forgot
realize.
about Hampton. Okay.
But Hampton was a guy that Penn State was in on. He did visit them. They did offer him. I was trying to see if they offered Petaway as well. They did. So those two guys that you just mentioned, they were in on. So clearly they were trying to get these guys again. May not be a bad thing. I mean, clearly Henderson's kind of run away with it, and I think it's fair to say he was a step above Pryor, anyways. I don't know that Kaytron Allen and Singleton have massive gaps in their talent, so maybe you don't see such a big disparity if they both end up at Penn State. But again, just some of the things that we saw here. Power runner, I do think he's got NFL size. I don't know if you just said that. I mean, he's already a pretty big kid. Long speed burst, start stop ability. I think he's going to be a really good running back. And as I mentioned, the fact that Penn State has been able to develop some of these guys is going to be really interesting with this next guy, who I'm a huge fan of. Did get a chance to talk to him a little bit in the offseason, did the interview article with him for campus2canton.com. Surprised that we're both higher on him than Colin is, and I don't know if that's just because Colin's a pessimist. I don't know.
Things haven't been going well in that realm lately for Penn State and for Colin.
That is true. And again, that also makes me question my judgment on Judkins, because he's got Singleton lowered, but he's got Judkins high, and I'm just like, man, like, Colin, what are you doing here? But that is Nicholas Singleton, 6'2", 210, 4-star. He is committed to Penn State as well, out of Governor Mifflin, which I believe is like near you guys, right?
Yeah, it's kind of near where I grew up. Yeah, it's Central PA. Yeah.
So, I mean, and his big thing, one of the things that he talked about with me, the big selling point for him at Penn State was because of how close it is for him. He said, I'd want to go somewhere that my family could come watch me play every single weekend because of how much his family means to him. His stats up until his junior year here, 287 carries for 3,000 yards, 54 rushing touchdowns, no receiving touchdowns, just the 3 catches. And I believe he just recently broke a record as well. He did. This past weekend, so 2 weekends ago, he set the new Berks County record. He's the first player in Berks County to score 100 touchdowns in high school. So, I mean, obviously, very good job at finding the end zone. One thing I'll ask you, because we talk about this a lot behind the scenes, I don't know if we really talk about it much when we're recording or on podcast. Is this area good competition? And obviously, we're going to see something here in the highlights and some of the stuff that it looks very easy for him. Does that matter to you? Do you factor that in at all when you look at these guys?
It has to be factored in, and no, it's not a particularly strong area. Pennsylvania has pretty good high school football, but not like this county borders or is 2 over from where Julian Fleming came from. And Colin and I have said for a couple years here now, Julian Fleming, it's literally farm boys. And then this 6'3", 210, just mammoth of a receiver shows up. And like, there's just nobody has a snowball's chance in hell at like even touching this kid. Singleton, I think the area is slightly better, but it's really funny. You're like, oh, he's the highest, most touchdowns in Berks County history. I'm like, so, but
yeah. Well, I mean, it was a big deal when I was looking up a lot of this stuff. It was kind of all over as soon as I typed in Nicholas Singleton, there was like 8 articles that popped up. So it's I guess worth being mentioned, right? I mean, 100 touchdowns, that's a lot.
And sometimes, like Journey Brown came from a tiny little high school in PA in like the middle of nowhere and scored like 150 touchdowns or whatever. And sometimes that should, like, if a guy's going to dominate in those, you better just freaking crush everybody. And that's what Journey Brown did. And that's what Nicholas Singleton's doing. So, I mean, if you're going to do it, then that's the way it's going to be done.
Once we pull up this tape here, you'll see that I feel like it reminds me a lot. Now, obviously, different position of it. It reminds me a lot of watching the Julian Fleming stuff because it's like, he's just looks so much better than everyone around him. And so that does make you wonder a little bit. He did have some verified results. So 4.59 40, 36.4 vertical, a 46-1 shot put. I don't know if that really matters, but it was on there, so I thought I'd add it. Maybe that shows that he's just really strong. I don't know. A 4.8 shuttle and then a 10.8 9 100 meters. So before we get into it, I am 1 spot higher than you on him, 3 and 4. So not a big difference. I think our biggest one is probably going to be the guy we talked about next, outside of obviously Sawchuck, who I have at 4 and you have at 12, which it's just, it's deflating for my ego, but that's all right. So let's talk a little bit here about what your thoughts are on Singleton and kind of what you see when you watch him.
So Singleton is a really fun evaluation in this class because you can kind of just let your imagination run wild with this kid. Like as you're watching this stuff, like look at this bleeping kid at 6 foot and 210 moving the way he is through these bodies. I mean, I'm struggling to call them players because I know the level of competition in the area, but I mean, look at the burst. The first step there is just ridiculous. It's honestly, this kid, if he can continue to actually develop as a running back, this kid can do whatever the heck he wanted to be. And if you told me in 5 years that this kid ended up being the best back in the class, I would believe you. That would not be a shocking thing to me. I mean, the movement skills, arm tackles do nothing to this kid. He's very, very sudden too. Like, I mean, I can watch this guy just run these pitches all freaking day. Unfortunately, and this is the tough part, if you can watch all he's doing is catching pitches, the way the offense operates is it's literally basically a 1940s offense or whatever, where they're running like a triple option or they're just getting him out into space and letting him kind of do his thing. So we have literally zero idea how this kid can run between the tackles, if he has kind of the football IQ to develop in that regard. But if he does, holy crap, like this kid's just going to be a freaking beast.
Yeah, I mean, that's the biggest thing that I took away from this as well, is just the fact that he goes like it's a pitch to the outside on every single play. And I mean, I guess you can't hate on his coaches for that, right? I mean, they noticed what worked and they continued using it.
They've been using this play since he was like 7 years old. I guarantee it. This kid has been running that same play for the past 13 years.
Look at how big he is. Like even that offensive or the defensive lineman right there, like he's the same size as that kid. So I'm with you. What I like is the explosiveness and the speed through. Like once he gets to that point, he's just gone. As you mentioned, that first step, that first burst, he's very good. Obviously, I put he's the best athlete on the field when you're watching him. I like the contact bounce. There's a couple times that these guys hit him low, and he's still able to kind of keep going. That one in the beginning where he throws his arm on the ground and keeps running. You like to see that from a big back like him. Again, the pass catching is kind of the big thing here. I did talk to him about that, and he said they just don't use it in the offense. It's not that he can't do it. And I do somewhat believe him on that as we watch the highlights again. It's almost the same play over and over again. So there's no need to throw him the ball because he's able to just get to the outside and beat everybody. I do think he's got he's good at cutting, and I believe both at avoiding tackles, hitting cutbacks. So I'm with you. I do think he's got a ton of upside, and that's what makes it very interesting because we just watched Kaytron Allen. I would say he's a tad bit better. I think he's a little bit more explosive. But Kaytron Allen, we saw at least a little bit of him going up the middle. We have not seen that here with Singleton. I wonder what that'll mean when they get to Penn State and if that hurts him at all because of what he's in. Now, again, this is all they put on Huddle, so we don't know that he hasn't taken a lot of carries up the middle. Again, dude's got 3,000 yards. I doubt all 3,000 yards have come on pitches. Maybe they were. I was
going to say Singleton's like, you want that?
Yeah, I was like, maybe I'll ask him, but it's one of those things where I'm very curious to see what he looks like here. This is one of these two guys are one of those backfields, along with honestly Henderson, who we did not talk about because neither one of us have him ranked that high. And not Emmanuel Henderson. I'm sorry. Who's going to Oklahoma with Sawchuk? I can't remember who it is now. It just jumped
Brown.
out of my head.
We talked about him.
Raleek Brown. Well, yeah, I was for some reason I have Emmanuel Henderson in my head because he's committing in the program tonight, and I was talking with Mr. Jared Wackerly about him earlier. So Raleek Brown and Gavin Sawchuk are both going to Oklahoma. That's another pairing that I'm really curious to watch, like what the spring practices look like, hearing what they're saying out of camp, because I think both those guys could be good, and I'm very curious, just like here, if, say, Singleton starts to take the control of this backfield, does Allen get a lot of work or not? But some of the traits on him: power runner, contact balance, acceleration, explosiveness, tackle breaker, and again, same thing as Allen, NFL size. He is going to be a very fun back, I think, to watch. And one of the things I hate too is that he's going to Penn State because especially with the way Ohio State's allowed guys to run all over him. I don't know if that's changing anytime soon. Both of these guys could do that to him. So how much separation do you have between him and Allen? I mean, I have them 3 and 5. You have Allen at 5 as well, I believe.
Yeah,
so you
and
have
5,
him one
so
spot,
back. Yeah.
and I have
for what it's worth,
split.
I thought Kaytron Allen was going to Alabama for like the longest time. The Penn State thing kind of surprised me.
Right.
So I can see them being a Thunder Lightning duo, which is goofy as hell to say when your Lightning kid is 210. But
Right.
I could see Penn State using them that way. I really, really could. I mean, because they're both just excellent, excellent players. And it's actually really rare that I put a kid that like I have no idea if he's a natural runner at all in the top couple of spots. But it's just like the potential is so tantalizing. It really, really is. I mean, his potential is through the roof. He might never be like the technical kind of guy that a Travion or a Bijan is, but I don't think he needs to be.
No. Yeah, he really doesn't. He's a guy that I'm hoping I can end up with at least a couple shares of him on my rosters because I really think he's got a ton of upside. And he's a very humble kid, too, which I like that about him. There was not 1 ounce of like false modesty or anything when I talked with him. He was very humble. Talked a lot when I was able to talk to him about how good he thinks his offensive line is and the coaching. Like he never put it on himself. And I liked, even when I talked with Gavin Sawchuk as well, there was a lot of this is what I can work on to be better. This is what I want to do to be better. It was none of the kind of not, I would say, I'm trying to think of how I want to word this. It's not like talking to a college player, right? I think they get a little bit of that coaching. Like you're talking to a high school player. Granted, he may have talked to a lot of people at this point. He is one of the highest rated running back recruits in this class. But I didn't feel like he was just saying that to say it. Like I felt like he was really being honest with what he was saying. I enjoyed talking to him. I think I'm going to be cheering for him. I think he's going to be a really good kid, and I would not be surprised either. I think that's why I have him at 3 is because I think that ceiling could be right there with like Branson Robinson and Jaydon Blue. And I want to see a little bit more of running inside and if he can do any of the receiving stuff. And if he can, I'm with you. I think the ceiling is the roof, right? That's what good old Michael Jordan says. I think
What
it's
would it shock you with how Penn State's strength and conditioning program has really worked with a lot of these kids recently? If in 3 years he tests like Saquon Barkley did,
no, not at
like
all.
that wouldn't shock me at all.
No.
So I mean, that
Yeah,
in
I mean,
itself is appealing.
yeah, I don't want to. I hate like talking about and saying stuff like that because obviously, someone not paying attention is gonna be like, "Oh shit, Matt and Austin just said Nicholas Singleton's the next Saquon Barkley." I'm not saying that, but no, with that testing staff, I mean, I would not be surprised. I think he's got a better chance of doing it than Allen. And again, if he can just produce, I mean, it's gonna be. I think the big thing that's going to help him and Allen is we know because Felix likes to joke about it, and he's true. Big Ten football is boring, and a lot of it is because they're very power run. And if Singleton can show that on film against some of these defenses like Ohio State, everything, who will get a chance to play once or 3 times, hopefully, then I really think he's gonna his stock is going to skyrocket even more than it already is. We talked a little bit about having those guys that are already there, though. Lee, Holmes, and Ford, and Kane might even come back.
Mhm.
Do you think there's a chance that we see Singleton and Allen a decent amount next year, or because of how loaded that backfield is, it may be something where we have to wait till their sophomore years to see
I would be shocked if we see either of them. I don't know what Penn State's non-conference looks like for the first couple of games of the year. Because I almost just said I would be shocked if we even see either of them play a snap. We might see the one of them or two of them make a guest appearance in those games, but no, you're drafting them and you're not expecting anything year one. Really, as weird as it is to say, like any of these top tier backs here that I'm about to talk about, like there's one that I might see getting a ton of time in a certain scenario, and that's
number
it.
one. Yeah.
Yes, that's it.
So their schedule next year starts off kind of brutal. Wait, 20. This has got to be 2021. I definitely pulled up the wrong schedule, didn't I? I did. Okay, never mind. No, it says 2022. 2022 football schedule. Purdue. Oh, it is. Okay. So they get
Yeah.
Purdue to start off the season, Ohio at Auburn, then Central Michigan, then Ohio State, Michigan, Illinois, Michigan State, Indiana, Maryland, Minnesota, and then Rutgers. So really outside of Ohio, maybe Central Michigan, I don't see any games that they could really get in a blowout. I mean,
You aren't seeing those dudes.
yeah, unless Drew Aller comes in there and is exactly what we think he's going to be, and just like completely transforms this offense. But I mean, I don't even know that they would start him again. There's a lot of questions here with what James Franklin might end up doing. So I'm very curious to see, but I'm with you. Even if you don't get to see anything from these guys, I think they're one of the first running backs I would take off the board. I would even obviously take him ahead of at least Singleton over the guy we're about to talk about next. It'd be hard to take him over Robinson or Blue, who we'll get to here in a minute, but I might do it once or twice because all my teams are really crappy and I'm picking in the top 3. So let's talk about your guy here, Trevonte Citizen, 6'2", 210, 4-star. He's committed to LSU out of Lake Charles College Prep. His stats here, 135 carries for 1,121 yards and 14 touchdowns, 13 receptions for 144 receiving yards, 0 touchdowns. And you may say that's not a lot. Well, it's because he also plays defense, which I think matters. He is an athlete. He's the guy that you've been on a lot. I'm going to be honest, I didn't even know who he was. You were talking a lot about him. He's 3 for you. He is 5 for me. I have him behind Gavin Sawchuk, which might be just like a shot across the bow, and I do apologize about that. But I really like Gavin Sawchuk, as I've mentioned like 8 times in this episode. But you liked him way before he was really kind of jumping up in the recruiting services. I was trying to pull up his thing really quick here to see if he has moved up at all for 247 or Rivals to see where he is at now, because you have him at 3.
Mm-hmm.
What's the thing that separates him the most between Singleton and Allen while I'm trying to pull this up?
Yeah, so I noted a little bit earlier that I don't if you don't show any sort of nuance as a runner, it's almost impossible to end up in my top tier. So congratulations, Nicholas Singleton. You broke that rule this year. That tells you what I think about him. Citizen, you said, he does play defense. He's played running back and linebacker this year. He's played less running back and a lot more, or less linebacker and a lot more running back. And apparently LSU has told him they view him as a running back. If you look at his stats from the past couple years, freshman through junior years, he had 24 carries, 49 carries, and 62. He already has 65 through 6 games this year, and is averaging over 11 yards per carry. I mean, so once this kid is focused up a little bit on running back, I think the sky is really, really the limit for him there. You mentioned he's listed at 210. It's great size. Doesn't really need to gain much, if any, weight there. And I think he can play 2 positions. That's a great thing, but he's a very good athlete. I think he has solid top end speed. I think he'll end up being right around a 4.5 guy when all is said and done. That is perfectly fine for a running back. Excellent contact balance. He reminds me in that regard a lot of Jerome Ford coming out of high school, who he would run through arm tackles and he wouldn't even like alter his gait at all. He would just continue through it. It's pretty rare to see, but you'll see in some of these clips just how he gets contact and it doesn't really matter. You can see the speed here to split those 2 defenders at a pretty decent level of high school football there in Louisiana. The other thing about him is he's an excellent pass catcher. The raw numbers, again, as we said, are never going to be very high in high school. He's one of the best in this class. And I think once you can see in some of these clips as well, when he gets in the open field, he can shake and bake a little bit. He's not just a straight line guy. So I think with him continuing to shift as a full-time running back, I think we're just scratching the surface of what he can do. He's basically the anti Nicholas Singleton, I guess you could say. I mean, obviously still a very good athlete, but I mean, they're polar opposites, but I love them both for those reasons.
Yeah, so the speed is very interesting to me here. He ran track. I talked a lot about this when I talked about Gavin Sawchuk in the last episode. So I have on here his personal best are an 11.31 in the 100 and 22.9 in the 200. And I think you can see that with the way he pulls away from defenders at times. Very good at acceleration, good burst. He's a guy that I do like. I mean, I was not really paying attention to him. He's jumped up. I don't remember him being this high, so I went and looked. He's at 8 in the composite and 9 for 247. Do you remember where he was when you looked at him?
He was not even close to that high. I'll pull up his history here, but I mean, the man is moving up in the world. And I think probably because he's playing more running back and less linebacker.
Yeah, because I remember when you first brought him up, I want to say he was like at maybe the 20-something, and because I had not looked at him at all, and you talked about how much you liked him. I know that you were one of the first guys on him that I remember seeing. But yeah, I'm very interested to see, especially his senior highlights, because now we get what looks like, I mean, that's just beautiful right there. getting to see him focus more on running back. You mentioned he's already got 65 carries, which is the most he's had in a season, 62 in his junior year. I do think that he's already, as you mentioned, got the NFL size. Maybe playing linebackers made him a little physical as well. I don't think he's afraid at all to kind of lower that shoulder onto players. Doesn't need to, just right there. Lower. I mean, granted, that was like that DB looked like he was like 160 pounds soaking wet, but still, I do think he's going to be very interesting. The fact that he's going to LSU, I think could be really good for him because I don't see anybody there that could really get in his way. And so he could legitimately end up being a starter next season. And LSU with, man, we don't know what's going on with them. Coach O's gone. Who's going to be the coach? But, Tyrion Davis-Price, I can't even think of any. Emory, is Emory even there anymore? I can't even remember who some of these guys are, but I think Citizen could start right away for this team.
I think he can definitely contribute. Look, I think everybody really liked Corey Kiner and to a lesser extent Armani Goodwin this year solely because they were propped up by a weak running back class. I don't mean any disrespect to Corey Kiner or Armani Goodwin when I say that. I just think that's the nature of what it is. They were both like low tier 2, borderline tier 3 kind of guys for me. I mean, they don't compare to this kid as an athlete or as a player. I'm really excited. And I just looked up. So I probably watched him back in April for the first time, maybe February. He's risen 0.02, which is, I mean, that's like a 0.93 to a 0.95. That's a pretty significant bump and has gone from about 190 in the composite to about 110. So, I mean, he's done some serious work this year.
Yeah.
I'm not banking on him playing this year, but I think as similar as we said coming into this, well, there by week 6, if that running game is not humming, maybe we see Corey Kiner. I think you can just insert a new name in there and use the same spiel again this offseason.
Yeah. So in saying that, he's jumped 80 spots right there, as you just mentioned. Right now, I just pulled up the rankings ahead of him. George Pettaway, Miller, Moss, Sawchuk, Singleton, Robinson, Brown, and Henderson. Why isn't Blue on here? Is that just because he's not playing?
Blue is RB19 in the composite or something, I'm pretty sure. And he's kept down by rivals, who we were talking about this in the Discord earlier. They had Travion Henderson as their RB4 last class. Rivals' credibility is slowly just going down the proverbial toilet for me.
Yeah, so, okay, that makes sense. I thought maybe because he's not playing his senior year, and we'll obviously talk more about that here in a minute, they kind of just didn't have him on here. How high do you think he could jump up in? Because 247 has him at 8, so they're obviously the highest on him, I would guess, of everybody else. That is 9 in the composite. We have him, both of us have him above Pettaway, Jamarion Miller, Le'Veon Moss. I don't have him ahead of Sawchuk, you do. And then I don't have him ahead of Singleton, you do. And then Robinson, Raleek Brown, and again, Emmanuel Henderson, who we won't talk about at all in these 2 episodes.
No, pretty crazy that the RB1 is not even in my top 15. Yeah. I see the appeal. This isn't an Emmanuel Henderson episode, so I can save that for a different time. He's just not my style.
Yeah. So how high do you think he can jump by the end of this, with, again, him focusing solely on running back in his senior year?
I don't know that he jumps any of those guys. I think he has a more well-rounded skill set than Pettaway, who I really like. He's very, very shifty. Michael Carter-esque. I mean, it's comparing the helmet a little bit when he's going to be at UNC, but he fits that role pretty perfectly. But RB8's a great spot for him. I mean, I'm surprised he's risen that much because he was like the RB17, 18. But I mean, 24/7 is the best in my opinion of the 3. They have him at 8. So there you go.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you on that. I think we mentioned this, or I mentioned it last episode, that Travis May, who we're both in a chat with, brought that up, that he went and did like a dive on how historically accurate they've been, and it's like miles and miles how much better they've been compared to 24/7 and ESPN, who are the 3. If for those of you who don't know, I don't think we've ever explained that. If you don't know what the composite is, it's taking the rankings of these players from 24/7, Rivals, and ESPN. They put them together, and that's how you get the composite score. And then on 24/7 Sports, they also list their ranking. They show the difference in the 2. So clearly ESPN is obviously pretty high on Citizen as well. The fact that he's at 9 in the composite, I would imagine Rivals is probably bringing him down. I was trying to pull up Blue. So, yeah, he's 4 in on 24/7 and 14 in the composite. So I don't know. It may just be rivals holding him down, but we can save that for later because we're about to get to him. Let's talk about the running back number 2, who some have said they could even put up there as the RB1. That's Branson Robinson, 5'10", 224 star. He's committed to Georgia from Germantown. To be honest, I didn't even know there was a place called Germantown.
There's a Germantown right down the street from where I grew up. It's not
nice.
The same Germantown, but I hear that every time, and I'm like, it's from down the street.
His stats here, 121 attempts for 1,179 yards and 4 touchdowns, 4 receptions for 26 yards and 1. And he is very much like who we talked about, Kaytron Allen with IMG. He only got to play in 8 games last year because of COVID, so that definitely affected him a little bit here. His rankings, I just had it. We both have him at 2. That's not, I think I would think it's going to be pretty consensus on the top 2 guys for most people when they come to talking about the freshman.
I see a lot of not Blue in the top 2. Branson seems to be the number 1 for a lot of people. I can't fault them for that. I just think Blue's better, but I mean, they're both really, really good.
Well, I guess I'll say for us then at this side. I don't think any of us, I'm pretty sure the 4 of us who are looking at it have looked enough at these guys, which is you, Alfred, Colin, and myself. And actually, Felix has Blue at 1 too. I know that. So Felix has looked at a couple of these guys. We all have Blue 1, so he's at least consensus for the site, which is probably bad news. It probably means you guys should fade Jaydon Blue. Yeah. All right, so go ahead and give us a little bit of your thoughts here on Robinson.
Branson Robinson is the prototype. That should be his nickname. I don't know if he has a nickname yet, but I'm going to TM that and try to sell it to him because he is perfect. He's 5'10", he's 220, he's got the low center of gravity, he's got the weight distribution that's basically perfect. And the way he moves at his size, if there wasn't Nicholas Singleton in this class, I would say he's the best mover in this class of the guys that are, 205 plus. He's college ready. As college ready as anybody coming out of high school can be. He reminds me a lot of Nick Chubb. And again, I know you're comparing 2 guys that are going to be going to the same school, so you're lazy, Austin. But I mean, seriously, he reminds me a lot of him. Great contact balance, an amazing feel for the running back position. You can tell he just is a natural at it. Some guys have it, some guys don't. He has it in spades. The things I like about him beyond just kind of the physical gifts and that rushing ability, though, he knows, like, if he wanted to, he could just drive everybody into the dirt every single play. He could have 9 guys sitting on his back, and he could just drive them 20 yards into the end zone. And that's not how he plays. He does not rely overly so on his physical ability and his physical gifts, and he can catch passes too. It's not something that he's had to do a ton of, but he can do it. I think he can develop a 3-down skill set. And really, like, literally the only nitpicky thing I have about him is that sometimes he has some wasted steps. He needs to clean up his footwork a little bit. That's like literally the only negative I have about the kid. He's very, very good. I think that he can contribute a little bit as a freshman at Georgia.
Yeah, I mean, Georgia, and we'll get to that in a minute. That's one of the things that worries me. So for me, I have on here, I love his contact balance, his speed. He's got a nasty little dead leg, which I like. It reminds me, and again, I guess I'll get a little bit lazy here since you did it. DeAndre Swift with his dead leg, and not that it's that good, but I do think he's got a nice little dead leg here. The pass catching is big. The fact that you see it enough on film that it stands out, I think is good, especially with the other attributes that he has and brings here. And then his explosiveness and his sudden movement in the short area. Also, I like his vision. I'm with you. I think he could easily be, much like Singleton, I think you could say the same thing for Branson Robinson. He could easily be the best back here. I do. So there's a good and bad, in my opinion, with him going to Georgia. The good, I think you could argue. Oh, man, are you serious? Cool. This whole time I've been watching the highlights and you were talking. I didn't realize I didn't put them on screen. I was like, that's why I was talking about the little dead leg I just watched there. And oh, wow, that's embarrassing. Sorry, guys.
We just have to use our imaginations today.
I put it up on full screen, so all I can see is what's going on here with Branson Robinson. I could not see that it wasn't up there. So I'll let this roll for a minute then. Because he is very good and he's a very fun player to watch. So the one thing that worries me about him going to Georgia is the fact that we don't always see Kirby Smart play his running backs early, even if they are very good. You know, we're seeing that right now with Kendall Milton. Granted, Branson Robinson is like 3 steps above Kendall Milton, but still, we see him typically leave these guys sometimes on the bench. They don't play that much, but the upside on that is with him going that's just a beautiful play right there. With him going to Georgia, I think you could argue they are, in my opinion, right now the RBU with the amount of running backs they develop over the past 8 to 10 years and put in the NFL. You mentioned Nick Chubb, DeAndre Swift, Todd Gurley. I'm forgetting probably Sony Michel, who was good for a couple years in the NFL as well. They've put a lot of really good running backs into the NFL who I think Branson Robinson could be just as good as all of them. I do agree with you. On the Nick Chubb thing, the one thing that I see with him that I see with Chubb is when he gets into the open field, he just pulls away from the guys, and it looks just very smooth and easy, which is a lot of Nick Chubb. You see him moving, you don't see that. You don't think he's that fast, and then he gets in the open field and like, oh, those defenders are going to catch him, and then they're 3 yards, 4 yards, 6 yards, 8 yards behind him, and he's just gone. He's going to be really good at Georgia. I think obviously him going to the SEC, playing against that competition is going to be great for him. Does that bother you at all? Not in drafting him. He's going to be easily the first or second RB off the board in freshman drafts, right? But do you get any kind of hesitation at all about him going to Georgia and when we might see him?
It doesn't really scare me because I think there's always a chance that some of these guys come back, but I think Zamir White is gone this year. I think James Cook is gone. That leaves Kendall Milton, DeJuan Edwards, I believe, is it there. Yeah. So, right away, that's basically 3 backs, and they use 3 backs pretty consistently. I think we see 60 touches to 80 touches as a freshman, and that's a pretty solid start there for him. And it wouldn't shock me if like his first game he breaks like a 70-yard touchdown. And it's, you have Vern or whoever calling the game, like, welcome to the SEC, Branson. Like, I could just picture this whole scenario playing out in my head. If it happens, then I look like a genius. But I don't think they're going to be able to keep him off the field. Yeah. And just look at this kid move. Yeah. Like, he's literally, if you went to a factory and built the perfect linebacker. The other thing I really like about him, how kind of running backs will have like that chugging run style with their upper body that's just like very visually appealing. He has that going at times. He's just like a dream to watch.
Yeah, he really is amazing. So what would you put a percentage on him being the best back when he comes out in 2025? Because he ain't staying for 4 years. And secondly, how big is the gap between him and Blue for you?
It's pretty close, and there's smart people like Adam Lewis, who I really, really respect. We talk prospects all the time. He's the campus visit pod and does some other stuff. He has Branson Robinson number 1, and he's just, I cannot argue with it at all in terms of percentage of if he ends up being the best back. It's like impossible to say, but I think he certainly has a shot at it. I think all the guys in my tier 1 except. I would be a little surprised if Trevonte Citizen ends up being the best back, just because I don't think his ceiling is quite as high as the other guys, but I really like how well-rounded he is. But the other 3, if you told me they ended up being the best back in this class, it wouldn't shock me at all.
And so is that where your tier 1 ends? I know we mentioned it in the first episode, but we didn't actually name the players. Both of us had 4 in our tier 1. Mm-hmm. So your 4 ends at Singleton, and you've got these next couple guys that we've just talked about.
Correct. Yeah. Okay. Singleton, Citizen, Robinson, and Jaydon Blue.
All right. Well, we'll mention really quick in case you have trouble reading. Contact balance. He is college ready, physical. I like his jump cuts a lot. Burst, pass catching, and vision for Branson Robinson. And then it is the man of the draft class, at least in our opinion, at campus to Canton. Jaydon Blue, 5'11", 2.5. He is a 4-star. I thought maybe could have gotten a 5-star. That's probably not happening now with the fact that, as you can see on the bottom there, he is not playing his senior year. He decided to sit out, probably a smart move on his part. He's already he committed to Texas early. He's not going anywhere. He's got all the talent in the world, so sit out. Don't risk the injury. We do have verified stuff for him as well, so we'll get to that in a minute. Stats, 432 carries, 3,767 yards, 46 touchdowns. 29 catches for 196 yards, 0 touchdowns. Again, that will not change. That's through his junior year that I can find. He's not playing his senior year. Verified results, a 4.31 shuttle, a 10.1 broad jump. He's got the 7.5 wingspan, 7.64 cone, and then a 1070 100 meters. So he is just an amazing prospect. And as I mentioned again, we both have met one, as does, I'm almost positive, everybody at our site. He is our RB1. Not to say that the rest of the guys, as Austin just mentioned, aren't close, but for us, there's just Blue sticks out just a little bit more. He comes in at R1. I am not going to mess this up this time. So tell me about Jaydon Blue.
Man, there really aren't enough nice words for me to say about Jaydon Blue. So I guess I'll start. He is as patient of a running back and has as good of a vision and a feel for it. It's just like I call it a natural runner. And when I think I say that term, I think I mean like their vision. There's like a feel, and if anybody that's played sports before, like a guy just kind of has it. Like they're always in the right spot. They know where to be. They know what to do in every single scenario. They're not even thinking. That's what it feels like when I watch Jaydon Blue. He sets up blocks beyond the first level. Look at that vision. He sets up that block in the middle of the field, and then he's just gone. It's honestly incredible how he does this. And the thing that really stands out is I think a lot of the time, like he almost gets caught when he's running to the end zone because I think he's only running at like 80%. Like, watch this. Like, he's slowing down, and this dude's not really catching him. Like, he is just an incredible athlete. That 40 or the 100 does not surprise me. That 10.7, he's fast, and he's an elite pass catcher. I don't use that word very often. For the running back position, there's a play that's coming up here. This one, and then the next one. He is an elite pass catcher. The way he just hands catch, it transitions from pass catcher to ball carrier. That one right there. He just has that dead leg. I mean, he has an arsenal of moves. There is like literally nothing negative that I can say about this kid. Literally the only thing is I wish we could have seen him used as a passing weapon further downfield. That's literally the only thing, and that's not a nitpick. It's just he wasn't used that way. So I love this kid. I'm going to get him on as many rosters as possible. I think he can be a Bijan and Travion level player as a freshman. I do.
Yeah, I am 100% with you. The one thing I like is I put on here, obviously, quick and shifty feet. I like how he's physical, but not like overly physical. Like he just makes it look easy. We've seen a couple of them already where he just kind of like hits the guy and keeps going like it's nothing to him. I love that about him. He's got very quick burst. The top end contact balance, his ability to shake tackles, his incredible long speed. As you mentioned, some of these times he's making these runs, and it doesn't even look like he's trying. Like, right, he's not. Yeah. He's not trying.
He's messing with people. Yeah,
yeah, and I'm with you on the. I don't even think the pass catching downfield. Like, I get what you're saying. I don't even know if that matters with some of the catches that you that one on the side of the end zone. And that's a good catch for a wide receiver. This kid's a running back, so. I'm very excited to see him. I think him going to Texas is going to be a whole lot of fun. We talked a little bit about on Debbie Debate recently. Should, my God, I do not want to call him Travion Henderson because I have a question about him with Travion Henderson. But Bijan, should Bijan end up sitting this year due to obviously the injuries we just saw with Kayshon Boutte? Is that the only way you see Blue getting on the field if Bijan sits?
I'm interested to see how that whole situation plays out because he's getting a ton of touches right now, like Bijan is. And I know after they played TCU, who has one of the, their own top running back prospect there in Zach Evans, and they asked Gary Patterson about it. Patterson kind of, took a shot at Sark and said, oh, well, like I would never do that to like I like want to preserve him for the next level. So I'm interested to see how that shakes out. Because as a running back, you want the touches. Like I'm sure Bijan is saying, I give me 30 every game, coach. I can run for 250 if you just give me 30. But I'm interested to see if he sits out, if they scale back his workload. I mean, the only other real running back they have on the roster right now is Roschon Johnson. They have like a couple other names, but nobody that I think you should feel comfortable at Texas ruling out there. So I'm interested to see if the presence of Blue plus kind of placate Bijan a little bit. There might be some negotiating there, but I think if Bijan opts out, I would be shocked if by week 6 or week 7, Jaydon Blue is not the guy there already. I'd be shocked.
If Bijan opts out, and this is where I was going to talk about with Travion Henderson, I wouldn't be surprised if we see it by like week 3, like we did with Travion this year. We talked a lot last year, obviously for different reasons. Travion missed his senior year because of COVID. Blue is missing his because he's opting out, doesn't want to get hurt. Understandable. That doesn't really bother any of us. We talked a lot about it on Devy Debate when it happened. I think the one thing I said is if you want to get cynical with it, maybe a coach looks at that and is like, oh, does he really love football? I really don't think it's an issue. I could see if Bijan opts out, I could see him taking over by week 3 because we've seen it hasn't really affected Travion. I don't think it's going to affect Blue. And I've asked you this on other shows, but just to kind of group those guys together, because you've talked about Bijan, Travion, and Jaydon Blue. How do you rank those 3 within the 3 classes to kind of give everybody an idea of what you think of Blue mixed in with the other 2 classes?
So I'll apologize to everybody. I realized that I misspoke after I went back and rewatched the 12 through 6 episode when it came out, because I had said something about Travion would have been the RB1 in this class. That is not true. It would have been Bijan, then Blue, then Travion for me, strictly as high schoolers.
So, I mean, that's speaking a lot, especially of what we've seen from Travion this year. I mean, he's looked amazing, and we know what we think of Bijan. And to have Blue above Travion Henderson just, again, speaks to how great he is. Contact balance, he's shifty, good receiver, lateral skills, physical runner, patience, and speed. He is going to be a guy that if you can get that 1-1, do what you got to do to get it, because he's going to be an anchor for your college team for at least 2 years if Felix has anything to say about it, because by the time his junior year comes around, Felix will be yelling at him to sit down. But he's going to be really good. I think he's, for me, Gavin, and I do have him in my tier 1, so it's probably not a good thing to say. He's the one that I think I'm as a little hesitant on going into the NFL, but the other 3 guys, I outside of injury, I really can't see any way those 3 guys don't make it in the NFL. And that's Singleton, Robinson, and Blue for me. Do you think the same for your top 4, your tier 1? Is that kind of how you view them?
All going to blue blood programs, basically, or very upper tier. I'm not going to say that about Penn State for obvious reasons, but they've certainly produced running backs. Yeah, I think I would be pretty surprised. I mean, because what we talked about in the first episode, they're all big enough already.
Yeah,
they're all athletic enough already. Some of them, Blue and Citizen, catch passes in the NFL already. In my opinion, they're already skilled enough at that. So I mean, now you're just trying to guess how good they're going to be, and that's the fun part.
Yeah, I mean, it's especially because of these top 4. I mean, easily, as you just talked about, Travion Henderson would be. So I'm gonna ask you a different question with Henderson here in a minute. We talked a lot about it in the last episode. We did not think last year's class was that good, and yet we saw the guys like Kamar Wheaton and LJ Johnson, who I like. I think they're going to be okay running backs. We're like getting jumped up in freshman drafts. This year's guys, I mean, it's extremely deep. We talked about it. There's like 15 for you. I think I had 16 or 17 that I'm willing to draft because I think could all be really good. How would if we're talking about let's mix in the 2020 and 2021 class, like obviously I'm assuming Henderson falls in behind Blue for you, or is it Robinson?
Wait, it's Bijan, Blue, Henderson, and then it would be Robinson, Citizen, and Singleton before we got to Will Shipley, LJ Johnson.
Gotcha. Okay.
Like that's the gap. There was a very sizable gap last year. Now Will Shipley has been pretty good.
Yeah.
So maybe I would think slightly differently about that if I had to revisit it today. And so I've watched, I said about 45 running backs. I have 32 right now that I'd be willing to draft in a freshman draft. That's a lot.
Ooh, okay.
That's a lot. And there will be more. I've only watched, like I said, 45. So.
Yeah, it's going to be, I can't wait to dive more. And I'm so busy during the season. I don't get as much time to dive in, although I'm off the next couple days. So maybe I'm going to try, if my wife doesn't yell at me too much, I might try and dive deeper into this class. So I'm excited about it. Hopefully, me and Austin will be able to get together here again soon and do some running backs and quarterbacks. Because I really like a lot of the quarterbacks. Wide receiver class, you mentioned it in the last episode. It's a little bit weaker, but there's still a lot of really good players in this class. There's a guy that me and you both really like that is not high up in the composite or the rankings. I've been debating on reaching out to friend of the show, Alan True, and seeing what he thinks about him and why he's not ranked that high. But I'm excited to dive more into this class with you as we get closer and closer to that kind of season as the college football season's wrapping up. So, Austin, again, thank you. Obviously, let everybody know, if they don't know who you are, which it would be insane to me, where they can find you.
Find me at Debbie Dietz on Twitter. I realize I have my goofy name that Felix gave me still on there. So at Debbie Dietz on Twitter, and literally everything I do is either there or on campuscanton.com.
All right, so guys, this will be up soon, and check back. We'll make some announcements or something when we're gonna get a chance to do running backs and quarterbacks.